Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing this week, Chris?
Doing okay, man. Busier summer than I thought, but how it goes.
Seems to go that way.
I actually printed out got on my tablet and got a calendar, just kind of like the lists out all the months and the days for the year.
Uh-huh.
And then I just marked them up. And so I could see where everything sat, like the visits and the camping trips and everything.
Yeah. One thing I've wanted to do, I haven't done it yet, but they have these big like whiteboard yearly calendars. It
Mm.
shows your whole calendar, the whole year, like up on a whiteboard and being able to pencil that stuff in, or I guess whiteboard it in, just so you could see it at a glance. But
Yep.
haven't done it yet. But I did just write a big to-do list because I was losing track of things myself.
Well, speaking of organization, welcome to episode 7. We're going to talk about organizing. All right, so I'll do the intro. So this is Talk Ops, the video podcast for business owners ready to organize. Growing, selling, or handing off your business takes order. Brandon and Chris, you and me, discuss everything related to organization, accountability, and all things that help you grow, sell, or even take a vacation from your business. And we're your hosts, Brandon and Chris.
Hey there.
Say hi to everybody, Brandon. All
Hi,
right.
everyone.
So today is episode 7, and we're going to talk about organizing your business by knowing yourself. And as opposed to the next episode, which is going to be about writing your job description, basically how to do it. So today is how to think about it. Next time is how to do it. So stay tuned, folks. So the intro is a little long on this one, probably because I didn't have time to edit it down, but let's see how it goes. So building your business takes organization. This means that you're creating a path of least resistance between today and your goals down the road. You do this by setting your goals and then hiring people to help you reach those goals. You also have systems that help people stay organized and get work done faster. After all, your tire shop would lose money if your people changed tires differently every single time. You wouldn't be able to schedule. Your costs would be different for each one. But the first step in doing all this is to find out where you belong as an owner in your business. What are your strengths? What should you be doing? And what should you keep your filthy nose out of? Today, let's talk about the mindsets that keep us overworked, disorganized, and constantly putting out fires in our business. Because in the end, we want businesses that are worth something so we can sell. And businesses that are ready to sell are organized enough to allow you to take extended vacations and keep a happy marriage. And of course, handing it off to your kids, things like that. It all comes back to organization. What do you think, Brandon? Is a good topic for today?
I think it is. It's a hard one for most people, in my opinion, because it requires you to be brutally honest with yourself.
Yep.
But I definitely think it's important if you want to run your business successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately, we really have to decide what this is about. Is this about, like, what are our real goals? Is my goal to have a job where I'm needed all the time? Because some people, they just need that. But then if your goal is like, hey, I want to build my job, my company is to serve bigger things, my family, maybe my church, my kids.
Mm-hmm.
If those are the bigger priorities, then this is probably a good discussion to have. So
Yeah.
We do have a icebreaker question today. So what is a time when you let chaos reign? When you let chaos take over? What was the time?
Yeah. I think I remember it pretty vividly, actually. It was a time where I was still learning how to say no to things. And I had basically got on a streak of just saying yes to a whole bunch of stuff. And all of a sudden, it kind of, I don't want to say came crumbling down, but I eventually just broke down and realized I've taken on way too much stuff. I've not prioritized. I have not said yes to I said yes to everything, but I didn't say no to the things I wasn't qualified to do or wasn't in my wheelhouse, and eventually realized I had too much stuff to do. And I remember with it, I had a talk with my wife. I completely broke down. I was a mess and just said, I don't know how to get it all done because I've committed to too many things. And her wisdom, I believe strongly in the wisdom of wives. And she told me, you need to learn to say no more and let's prioritize. Let's get you out of a couple things. Definitely had to decommit to some pretty big items. Um, but got it all kind of straightened out and got on the right path. And I still have a natural inclination to say yes to everything, but I'm a little better at least at saying no to some things and not over committing. So
That's
uh,
that's
that was
good,
for me.
and that actually is a good example for the kinds of things we'll be talking about. Um, mine was mine's a little different. So teaching a Bible study unprepared and then opening it up for questions. So like here's a cheat, right? So like you open up something you want to share with people, and then you say, what do you guys think about it, right? If especially if you're not prepared, because then you can like let them come up with questions, and then if you know the topic really, really well or the passage really, really well. But
Correct.
um if you know the passage well.
Yes, that's the key there.
So if you're I was unprepared to give answers. I was unprepared to really talk about the topic, and then I opened it up, and then people brought up zany ideas that I had never even occurred to me. And now we're talking about apologetics. And I didn't really kind of like say, like, well, that's another topic, and I love that question. Let's talk about that some other time. I just tried to deal with everything as it came from their terms. And that's
Yep.
too much work, right?
Yep.
And this also has like an analog for business too, and I think maybe they're both kind of this similar, because you weren't saying this is what I do and this is what I don't do. And I
Hmm.
wasn't in that situation saying this is what we're talking about. This is not what we're talking about.
Yep.
Because I didn't prepare well, you didn't prepare your mind well, I would argue.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the have it. So super, yeah, super. I mean, it's an icebreaker, but it's super applicable to what we're going to talk about. So I wrote down a couple of quotes that I thought were relevant to this discussion.
Yep. I
Uh,
agree.
okay, good. All right. So I'll just read them. So the first one's from The Art of War. And it is, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So this ancient wisdom, right? I mean, it's not scriptural, but um,
Hmm.
it is ancient wisdom, and it could be true, and it sounds probably true. Uh, that if you don't know yourself, I would argue that this applies in every part of your life.
100%.
The second one is Proverbs 16:32, which is scripture. Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. And so a little different. It's not about knowing yourself, it's about controlling yourself, right? Um,
Yep.
and so, but I think the first part of like knowing where you need to work on, knowing what you need to change is like knowing yourself, and then saying, okay, well, here's how I need to get where I can be this great, like a good leader, put myself aside, then put the goals, the things that are really important, the things that are bigger than me, my life of service, like the why in front, and then looking at my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's no way to control something if you don't understand it to begin with. I mean, it's like building a puzzle almost, where if you don't have a, now some people can do it. I am not one of them. My son is, ironically, but um, it is very difficult to build a puzzle if you don't know what the puzzle looks like to begin with. Hence, you have the cover of the puzzle the whole time, so you can build the puzzle. Now, my son, he can pull out two random pieces and put them together. I'm not sure how he does it, but um, in a lot of things in life, if you don't understand it, there's no way to control it, fix it, manage it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, particularly in our own personalities and our own characteristic traits, as Proverbs 13:32 said, the goal is to control our spirits and things like that. But if you don't know what problems you have or what struggles you have, or if you don't know who you are as a person, you can't control your spirit, because you don't know what you need to, what boundaries you need to put in place, or what accountability partners you need, or who you need to talk to, or what you need to read in order to control the problems that you currently face. Which is, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. This does require you to be brutally honest with yourself of who you are as a person, and there's no shame in your shortcomings. We all have them, and it's accepting that and then understanding what to do about them and how do you cover or make up for those shortcomings.
Yeah, and that's a cool direction you took it. I think the I remember sometimes the Albert Einstein, he was supposed to have said that if he had something like, what was it, like an hour to save the world, he'd take the first 59 minutes to understand the problem.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote, but I do
Yeah.
remember something vaguely like that.
And the last like or 50 minutes and then the last 10 minutes to actually do it. So
Well,
I
I even more like recent. I don't know if you ever seen the A-Team with Liam Neeson.
no. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, they, not to spoil movies or anything like that for those who haven't seen it, but he ends up in prison and he has to plot how to get out of prison and things like that. And the guy comes visit him in prison and he's like, if you give me 10 minutes to plan, I'm pretty good. You give me, abbreviating, if you give me 2 years to plan, I'm unstoppable.
Hmm.
The more time he had to prepare and get ready for something and understand it, the better he was at planning out a mission, and basically became unstoppable because he fully understood the problem then.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, so let's so it and I will add one more thing to pile onto that because so I wrote my thesis on the creative process, and one of the most important things you can know about creative, like originality that's relevant to the problem, because creativity comes in a lot of forms. Like sometimes they measure creativity by the number of novel ideas, which means that how many different ideas are there. They don't have to be good. It has to be
Yep.
different ideas, right?
Yep.
Um, but really good creatives are people who study the problem, not look for solutions, right? And that's why
Mhm.
Einstein said that. And he was totally right as far as innovation goes and problem solving. It's understanding the problem because the solution is often just the perfect solution could completely present itself.
Mhm.
You don't even have to work at it. You're just understanding the problem. And so that keeps you focused on what the problem really is that you're trying to solve. And then when you start asking, well, why, too bad we can't just, why can't we just, or whatever, I can't tell you how many problems I've solved by saying, too bad we can't just do this, right? And then the other people are like, well, you know,
Yeah.
people who knew more than me would be like, huh, yeah, maybe we could do that. And I would say something totally crazy, harebrained. And they'd be like, well, that's stupid. But, and then they would think of something that was totally like related to that because I
Yep.
asked stupid questions because I was just thinking about the problem, right?
Mhm.
Well, if we need to understand how a business owner can really lead his business, we have to know what the issue is, which is our first conversation point here. What's the way, and I'll just sorry if you don't mind me asking this. So what's the real issue? What's in the way between us today and our ability to grow, sell, and vacation? Like what is the problem that we need to solve, they need to solve, listeners need to solve as business owners that's in the way? Let's just review that real quick.
Well, I'll throw this out here. This would be my opinion, and it could be up for debate. I feel like there, in my experience, I've seen two different problems, or two general buckets the problem falls into.
Yeah.
One is there's a problem, I'll say, with the owner slash management, that they're getting in the way of progress. The business organization, whatever, runs well, but the owners get in the way. And because they can't let something go, or for whatever reason. but the owner's standing in the way one way or another. On the other hand, there are some businesses and organizations where the owner understands themselves, they can kind of stay out of the way, but they still can't find what the root cause of their problems are in the business. So they're good at self-realization and self-analysis, but they're not so good at, I guess, organizational analysis, and they can't find the problem in the business that is holding things back.
Mhm.
Which I mean, I guess in some way, shape, or form can be the business owner's problem too. But um, it's usually either a problem with the bit owner or it's a problem with the business. It's one of the two, and trying to figure out which one it is, and then trying to solve it. I
So
would say,
how do I
oh, go
know?
ahead.
Yeah. So how do I know as a business owner what my problem is? And maybe we could go into a little bit of like the common types of thinking styles of thinking, or I think we call them mindsets in the
Yeah,
notes. Maybe you could talk about a little bit about that, a few of the mindsets. Maybe the first one, maybe you can.
yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So in a owners, the mindsets the owner have, he can either, and I've seen multiple instances of these as well. One that we were calling the technician's mindset, where they just want to work, they want to get their hands dirty, they just want to be in there day to day, and that in and of itself is a problem. I mean, you can never scale something if everything is predicated on one person doing the work. You got to find a way to systematize that work to a point where you can teach other people, hire them on, and train them on how to do it.
Mhm.
Um, so there's the technicians. I'd actually add another one to it. I call it the engineering mindset, where if particularly you see this in a product business where they're selling a new patented product or something, and the owner is the one who developed that product, they continue to try to tinker with that product because that's their skill set. They want to continue to perfect it, and hey, I can make this little tweak and make this product better yet.
Mhm.
And they spend their whole time focused on how to make the product better instead of focusing on how to grow a business and run the business with the product they've already got. So I call it the engineer mindset, and they just get into like this perfectionist mentality and want to keep engineering their product.
Yeah. And I think Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, would say that those are pretty much kind of the same thing. Like you would like anybody who's just like wants to do the work, right? Whether it's an engineer, technician, he's just saying technician. He would say technician would cover basically anything you do that's a skilled job,
Sure.
Um, in his book, he is like, oh, it's an engineer who, like the technician, is the engineer who says, hey, I could just, why am I only getting part of the money? I should get all the money, so I should just start my own business, and they start
Mm-hmm.
their own business, and they're they don't know how to do, they don't care about payroll, they don't care about, like a contractor is really an example. Like contractors, man, they a lot of times they don't want to do the paperwork. They just want to be out there, maybe even just managing jobs. They want to work. They want to swing the hammer, a lot of times. Um, but then there's also the manager mindset where, you're like, oh, okay, well, the manager would solve this problem, right? Because if you just had a manager, well, then you could fully run a business. But
Mm-hmm.
there's some problems with that too, right? Because with a manager, you don't have the why. You're kind of like, I think the way I think Covey talks about it this way, where the person who's doing the work, like say you're trying to get somewhere. I think they use the jungle analogy.
Mm-hmm.
The person who swings the machete, making the path, right? They're the technician. They're the ones doing the work, and then the person who is like sharpening all the, like keeping on track on the path, sharpening the machetes, making sure they're getting sharpened and all that stuff, they're the manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the leader is the one who's like looking around and making and saying, hey, wrong jungle,
Yeah.
and is basically just saying like, hey, we need to remember the why, and we just make sure that everything is tracking to the why. Everything we do is is refined and pointed at the why.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so you have the technician, engineer, and then you have the manager. Next question I would have would be, is it possible, like, let's say anybody who's listening to this, they're like, yeah, I'm a little bit more the technician. I just love to do the work. I spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time focused on the work, and maybe that pulls me away from the management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe there's a manager out there who's just like, I like managing things. I don't want them to change. I don't want to be bothered. I actually don't like it when, like, I sort of hate it when clients or customers come in and want something different and I have to deal with it. I just want them to want what I give them, and I have a nice process for it. It's clean, and they disorganize it when they come in and ask for new things. Um, Maybe so. Let's say there are a couple of people who have this mindset, and they know they're being honest with themselves right now, listening to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, can they change, or is it just like, oh, sorry, you're predetermined to be this way, and you will never change? Is it possible to actually change, and to become a good entrepreneur who's building a business rather than someone who's just kind of always stuck in it?
Yeah. This, in my opinion, goes back to some of our other podcasts that we've talked about. Do from top down, building an organization from top down, working on your business, not working in your business. Can you change the mindsets? Most likely not, because it's just who you are as a person. But what you can do is find ways to, that's an issue, and you put systems in place to safeguard against falling into those mindsets. It's very hard to, I mean, like, I got brown hair. I mean, I can bleach my hair blonde, but it still doesn't change the root color of my hair. I can change it temporarily, but give it long enough, it will come back out. And you have to continuously be working on the process to make sure, if you don't want to see brown hair, that you're continually dyeing it and making sure that it doesn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that as the same kind of thing as some of our personality traits. It's who you are, it's who God created you to be, and that's okay. That's what allowed you to do certain things that you've already done. But in the world of entrepreneurship, that isn't necessarily the only skill or trait or mindset that's needed to run a successful business. And I think about it like the body of Christ. I mean, there's a lot of different roles in the body of Christ, and your skill set's really good for certain situations, but you don't always need a hand when you're trying to kick a soccer ball. You actually don't want a hand when you're trying to kick a soccer ball. But so some ways you can try to mask it. I think number one, that's like we talked about in previous podcasts, it's spending the time to work on your business, not in your business. When you have the time to step out, you can self-assess and analyze the business from a higher level and say, am I getting too deep into it again? Am I allowing my natural characteristics to come out?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to take that time to review where, if you've gotten too deep into it again, or if you're a manager, am I just delegating everything again?
Can we hold that thought, because we are going to get to mitigation. We are going to get to this, how to deal with it.
Okay.
I want to add a few thoughts before we get to that, because I might disagree a little bit with you can't change. But first, I want to say, though, I think one of the bigger points I think we need to make is that, hey, a lot of this is about just like aligning your life to who you really are. And so if you find that you can't change, and you're just like, hey, maybe this is why I'm so unhappy running my business, then make a different plan. And I think we can talk about how to do that. I think you have some good ideas. But before we come to that conclusion, I do think some people can change, because I think there are some people who are doing it that way because that's how they know how to do it, and they can learn how to be different. It's not because of their personality types, because that's all they've seen. So, so for me, my example is, I noticed that at work, I'm a much better leader than I am sometimes at home. I'm at home, I found that I am not as patient. I'm a little micromanagey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are situations where I have to show people how to do things in the like show them how to do it all the time. But am I willing and able to then delegate that? Am I going to be so much a perfectionist that I'm always mad because we're not doing it exactly my way? Or am I able to say, it doesn't quite have to be that way. I'm just trying to help you be good. I'm just trying to help you grow. I'm just trying to help you get this done in a way that's like meets standards, right? And those standards are not just what I feel at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very technician kind of way to think. But the standards are the ways that are just kind of the minimum, like, hey, this is minimum level. My son sitting over here, he's cleaned the toilets this morning. Well, he didn't do the job I wanted him to do. And so I called him back down and said, you're going to do it again. Um, when he was done, I didn't hold him to the super high standard. He tried some stuff. We realized that one thing I expected was a little too hard. And so I didn't ask for him to do it. And at the end, I said, good job, because he did a good job the second time. I'm learning that. So I think that there are a lot of times people can, there are other reasons that they're being a technician right now, other reasons that they're acting as such a manager right now. But I think there are some people I've known who they're just never not going to be a technician. They can't hire people because they're never happy with the work they're done. And I think we have to also ask the question, maybe I can change, but is it worth it right now? Is it
Mm-hmm.
worth it? Like, is that the thing I should be spending my time and effort doing? Or should I just go
Yeah.
out and be a technician? So yeah, so maybe now's the time to talk about what maybe finish your thoughts you were that thought.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I am where I was starting with that is if you are if you if you want to change, or even if you're just trying to mask some of those tendencies, like I said, having the time to take a step back from the organization and do a self-assessment of yourself, as well as the organization, as, hey, am I getting too deep into it? Am I falling into my old habits and stuff like that? Because again, I think a lot of these mindsets, yes, they can be changed to a point, but I think a lot of us do have some inherent qualities to us, and that's what makes each of us special and unique and have fit in really certain roles.
Mhm.
Um, but as a owner, you have to be able to, I guess, morph with things. You have to be able to do what's needed at the time that's needed, and you can't always just rely on the things you are naturally gifted at. Um, and I, like, for myself, I call it being a Swiss Army knife. I mean, sometimes you need to be able to get into HR, sometimes you need to get into accounting, sometimes you need to go into all these different areas, which some of those, the technician mindset might not be a good mindset to have.
Right.
Um, because if you like want to get into the accounting, well, I'll just do it. That can get you into a lot of trouble if you mess up the accounting. That you'd be much better off not following your natural instincts and managing it out or delegating it out to an accountant. But again, it's taking that time to realize, okay, I am getting too deep into this project again, particularly if you're a technician. And I need to take a step back and hire it out, delegate it out to
Let
someone
me
else.
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I feel like maybe before we get into the steps, I don't know. Again, I have another. I just want to make sure. So, what are like? Is it possible? Like, let's say you are a technician or a manager, and you realize it, and you're like, but I still want to be a business owner. Like, is my only option to get a job and try to sell my business, or can I also be? Is there a way for me to work with like partners and say, hey, I realize I have shortcomings. I need to have partners.
That is a very interesting question. In my experience, I have actually done some research on this topic specifically.
So we are running low on time.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick.
All right.
I have seen both sides of this argument. I've seen some people that said, no, you shouldn't get into business. The American society has built up this idea that the only way to be successful in this world is to be a business owner. So you have a lot of people running into entrepreneurship that really shouldn't. And you would be much better off going to get a 6, maybe even a 7-figure salary job at a big corporation than you'll ever make money just running your own business. So there is a school of thought that would say that. I would tend to think anybody in America, anybody can be an entrepreneur if they want to. Are you going to be super, super successful? You're going to start the next Microsoft? Probably not. There's about 2 people in the world who will ever do that. But you can still make a good go of it, and you can enjoy the process. You get to have the freedoms, assuming you manage and organize your business correctly. You'll still get a lot of freedoms that other people won't in a job. So I do believe anyone can do it. It's going to be harder for some than others. So that might be a confrontational opinion. I'd be curious on yours.
No, I totally agree with that. So in the last few minutes, let's get into the action steps. And I think you said understand what you're good at. I would that leads us right into the next podcast, because that's the action steps for the next podcast. Writing your job description. I think that's great. What are some higher level action steps? I think we have 3 here. Do you want to talk about the first one, or you want me to take that one?
I can talk about it. I think, and I'd actually add to it in a brief moment that we've got, getting your spouse on board. Like I said earlier, I do believe in the wisdom of your spouse, your wife, that they can help you out dramatically. No one knows you better than your spouse does. But I want to be careful not to alienate single people who have decided to run their own business either. That for those who are single and don't have a spouse, you might be some 20-year-old out of college who's just trying to start a business and haven't got married yet. Find a good accountability partner, whether it's a sibling, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a pastor at church, or someone that you've gotten really close to, a college roommate that you did 4 years of life with, or something like that. Find a good accountability partner that you can get good, honest feedback from. Hey, do you see these problems in me, and stuff like that? So, yeah, either a spouse or accountability partner.
I would add to that. The next, one step would be look at what you do, as far as your behavior, and then what the results of that, as the next step. And that's different from like your job. I'm talking about like, how do you behave? What's your tendency? What are your tendencies?
Yep, exactly.
How do you see your personality affecting your business? And then what are the results of that? Like, when you do that, do people get discouraged? Are they encouraged? And then record those things, because some of those things are strengths, and then others are weaknesses. You can see that played out. And then what's the last one, Brandon?
That is a good one. I actually hadn't read it earlier. But you can send your questions to us.
Yes.
Through our comments, and we'd be happy to
via YouTube, right?
Yes, via YouTube, and we can discuss them with you. Happy to give advice where we can. Again, we're not perfect. We make our own mistakes. We have our own tendencies. Chris is more in the creative. I'm more in the analytics. So we have our own tendencies, our own areas of expertise and stuff like that. But we'd love to help anybody that you can't find someone, or you can't think of anyone off the top of your mind who would be good at giving you some feedback. I'm happy to give honest feedback. Now, some people don't like my feedback because it is honest, but that's part of it. And you got to be able to take criticism along with compliments. And if you can't take a little criticism, you'll never be able to improve on who you are and improve on your organization. So,
yep. Good. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about our next topic, which is writing your job description, which is really how to execute on what we just talked about. So, all right. Well, this has been another episode of Talk Ops with Brandon and Chris, where we encourage business owners to organize their business to get more money at sale, to help your kids succeed if you're handing it off to them, or just take a vacation without worrying about what's going on at work all the time and putting out fires.
Yep.
Please comment, like, and subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube. We'd love your comments and questions. Got a suggestion for another topic? Put it in the comments. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
next time.
Thanks.